that sound hole will be right inside of there, as you can see here. And then you got your purfling, and then you got your herringbone. And now the question is, what purfling do I put on the outside? And I'm kicking around, the different choices, and I think I like the wider purfling on the outside. I've looked at them both, and either one of them would look wonderful. They would look fine. And this would be, the more traditional to kind of be totally symmetrical, but I say, why do what everybody else does? And without going, crazy here, I don't like to do radical stuff either. But this is a little nicer, I think. I think it's going to look really cool with this wider purfling on the outside edge. And, I've got it. Why not use it? Thanks to Mr. John Manura of AccuSlice. Check out AccuSlice on YouTube. You'll love it. Well, my calipers are still set to the spacing here. So if I just lay it on here and take my fine Sharpie pencil, which never is around when I need it, and I lay it on here, that ought to give me a pretty close, idea of where it needs to go. And I can put this on like so. Well, I found my missing Allen wrench, and of course it was exactly where I put it, which was I put it away where it was supposed to go, and of course that's why I couldn't find it. Yeah, it's heck to get old, that's all I can tell you. If I had an animal suffering this much, I'd put it out of its misery. Okay, let's see. I've marked where I want this circle to go already. And now I'm trying to set this in place. And I believe I've got it right where it ought to be, right about there. Okay, so that's good. And now I'm up at the area, my test area, if you will. And so I'll just make a little cut here just to make sure. I just want to eyeball that and maybe measure it and stuff and make sure it's in the right place. And what I'm looking at is to see if the space difference between the inside ring and the outside ring will be about the same. And it's going to be pretty darn close, but just by eye, it looks like this outside one is a hair too close. So I'm going to try to just open it up ever so slightly. Just barely at all. While it's in the slot like this, I'm just going to take it and push it to the outside edge of the slot, to that edge. Just, that'll, barely give me anything, but that's all I want. It's just a tiny, tiny amount. Now I've got that locked back down. I'll try it again. So I expanded the slot just a little bit so I could see the ends of the slot in both directions. And that looks a little bit better. It's barely perceivable different, but it's just different. It's just slightly different. So I'm going to go with that. And now it's time to make the cut all the way around. Now this is just the inside edge. Okay, I'll clean that up and show you what that looks like. Okay, there's lots of ways to measure this and check it and make sure it's perfect, but for me, it seems to be working very well to just do it by eye and mark it with a pencil and just do a little slight test adjustment there if I need to. So I've got a little mark there, and that the inside of the mark would be where I want to go to. So I'll set this on here, and I'll loosen up the screws, and I'll move this out to the inside of that mark, and I'll be a little bit conservative. I'm not going to try to go all the way to the mark, but real close. And of course, the light is just perfect to be wrong, and there it's just about where I want to be, right there, I think. And we'll tighten that down. And we'll do a little test cut up here in the test area again. I have to cut off the little fuzzies because they mess up your test. So just little tiny fuzzies there that are left by the router bit. Okay, so the idea is to see if that slot is wide enough. And pretty good. I'm going to say it's just a hair too big. Just a hair, and I mean like barely any too big. So do the same thing. I'm going to loosen these up, and I'm going to try to back it off just a tiny bit, and that's really hard to do. I feel like it moved just tiny amount. I'm going to lock it back down and test it again. So the only place the test will be valid will be at the ends of those cuts this time. I don't know if the fuzzies are going to be in my way. They look like they're in my way. Wow, that's a perfect fit. That's just perfect. It's just, if anything, it might be a hair tight, but I'd rather go tight. I can always go looser. So we'll go with that. We'll make our cut all the way around. I believe that's going to work real well. Yep, just fits it just like a glove right there. It's just, I'd say it's just perfect. I'll have to clean up all these fuzzies before I can go bend this stuff to fit this slot, so I'll clean that all up and I'll show you the next step. That's what it looks like now, and looks real good. It took me a while to cut all those fuzzies out of there, and for the record, and those of you who will tell me to use a spiral down cut bit, that's what I was using. It's a spiral down cut bit, and it still left fuzzies, and there were quite a few fuzzies. It depends on the kind of wood, you know. If you're routing hardwoods, it leaves almost nothing. But you route these softwoods, and the fuzzies are going to happen almost no matter what bit you use. But anyway, and that's a brand new bit, by the way, so it wasn't like a used bit or anything. I think I've got it cleaned out well enough that I can go bend the last piece of purfling to go on that. So we'll do that next. Well, I've bent this, and I don't know, honestly, if it's going to go yet or not, but I'm going to try to see if it'll fit in this slot now. And if I can get it in there, well, then we'll just cement it in place. But I'm not 100% sure it will go. Kind of think it will. Doesn't really feel like it's going down in there. Wouldn't you know, it kind of feels like maybe the wood has expanded and doesn't fit the slot now. It's not good. It's kind of in there and it's kind of not, so I'm not real happy about the way it's fitting right now. It figures. I think it's partly because the wood has expanded as I try to bend it around here, and the slot is tight. So I'm going to work on all that a little bit and see what I can do about that. Well, I pulled the purfling through some sandpaper. In other words, I held sandpaper on both sides of it, pulled it through 3 or 4 times, and now it does seem like it's going down in there. It's a tight fit, but that's kind of good. But right now I'm running into a roadblock right here. It's not going in right here. I'm gonna try using a little force. That seemed to work. That seemed to work. Yep, that's working. I think we might have it up to the point of where it's got to go back together here, and I'll have to cut that off. It went, and the ends made it up perfectly tight. In fact, they're so tight you can't really see where one starts, the other one ends. That's the way I like it. And I think I'm down in there everywhere. I'm just going back over it with the blunt end of the screwdriver here to make sure. I like it. I like it a lot. It looks real good. So now I will CA glue this baby in place before it decides to do something else. And that would be except for the fact that my CA glue is clogged up, as usual on camera. I think we're really good there. Again, I'm going to go around and press to make sure that it's not coming up anywhere, and I don't think it is. I think it's down in there. And the glue is starting to set up really fast now, and I believe it's just about set up. So just to make sure, I'll spritz it with the accelerator. The lightest amount of accelerator I can use, the better. But it's really hard to control with a spray bottle like that. I know they make pump ones too, and I've had the pump ones as well. But I actually like this brand, and I like this accelerator very good. I do like it with the spray, by the way. The pump is okay, but half the time those pumps go out on you. And they usually don't go out until you really need it. This here is the time when you've got to be very, very careful. It probably doesn't look like I'm all that careful, but I am trying to be very careful about where the plane goes, because if it slides off of this, it could easily damage the top at this point. That's about as good as I dare go with the finger plane, and trust me, that's really close to level. It's not level, but it's close. So I will put some sanding to it here, and again on camera the sanding block is missing. I found it though, and this should be the final sanding in this area for the moment anyway, and then we'll cut out the sound hole. Well, I'm going to go ahead and clean that on up, and I'll show you what it looks like cleaned up here in a little bit. Well, that, my friends, is as slick as snot on a doorknob. You cannot feel that anywhere. It is just perfectly smooth. Nothing to feel. And maybe you can see it turned out, I think, just gorgeous. So, nothing left to do but to cut out the sound hole there and get rid of that nasty mess in the middle, because, you know, I'm embarrassed over that since my bit slipped and made a mess. But it will soon be no more, assuming I don't mess it up even worse here, trying to fix it. I basically just slide this in here and let it fall down in the slot. That should be pretty good. I think we're good. So I'm going to lock her in place. And the thing I need to do now is just deepen the cut to about 100,000ths of an inch. I believe I have it set to the appropriate depth, so we will now see what we can do about cutting that the rest of the way through. Okay, with any luck, we now have a sound hole. Looks like it did a real nice job to me. I'm pretty happy with that. Nice close-up look at that. I think it turned out just as good as it could turn out. Pretty happy with that. Well, my friends, you may recall from prior videos on this last Hurrah guitar, a lot of starts and stops and failures and things. Here's where I'm at right now. I got the top pretty much finished as far as the top itself goes. I don't have any bracing, of course, but that's pretty much done. Secondly, I cut out all the parts for the back. There's 3 parts here, and I can make a 3-piece back. I'm sure that will work, but we haven't made any progress on that. Also, I had the neck profiled from, and this neck block was from when I started that 12-string guitar and forgot that it was a 12-string. So I was able to reuse that on this guitar, and it's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with this neck. But as you will recall, when I was cutting these parts for the back, I also cut parts for the sides. And then, as you will recall from the video, I cut these to full length that I had, but the full length is only 28 inches. And I really need about 31.5 inches. So therein lies a 3-inch deficit when you add them together here on the 2 sides. So I'd have a 3-inch gap at the back end of the guitar, or a 3-inch gap at the front end, or 1.5 inches at both ends, or any other combination you want to come up with. The problem is, these things are too short. So we went to LMI and ordered a set of sides that looked in the picture like they would match this. Not so much when we got them here. I mean, they were very nice sides, don't get me wrong. The wood looked pretty. Not nearly as dynamic looking as this wood is. Just wouldn't have matched at all. They were really dull looking compared to this. The picture made them look like they looked like this, but they didn't look like that in reality at all. They weren't even similar. It was the same sides though. It was not bait and switch. It's just the way the photograph made it look. Anyway, bottom line is, I've got to come up with a creative way to stretch these boards. Now, I used to have a board stretcher, but I don't know what I did with it. I can't find it anywhere. And if I could ever find it again, I could probably sell that to Stu Mack and make $1 million too. Obviously, I'm being silly. I don't have a board stretcher. So I have to come up with a creative way to make up 3 inches from the neck end to the heel end. How would you do it? I kind of have an idea of how I'm going to do it, and I'm going to use these boards. Let's see if it works. So how am I going to make these sides that are approximately 3 inches too short work on this guitar? Well, it won't be easy. I'm going to start by making a heel that is slightly wider than standard. It's not really wider than standard. It's slightly wider than what I have made as a standard in the past. Gibson heels are sometimes wider than what I'm going to make here. But anyway, the point is it'll be a little wider than what I've made in the past, and I'm going to make it at the very end of the heel. I'm going to make it about 1.25 inches wide, which normally mine are a little bit under 1 inch wide. And then we'll taper it up to the other side here. So 5/8 on each side of this, of the center. I've got this right on the center. All right, so I have 5/8 there, and I'll just kind of draw that across. And while that will be a little wider than I normally do, it's not crazy wide. That will give me, you know, 1.25 inches here to play with, or actually a little more, because what I'm going to do is make a fill piece that fits in behind this that will have a border that sticks out past this. These sides will come up to that border. That will give me a lot more you know, length in the sides. So basically it's going to look like the binding goes right down the side of the neck here, because I'll use maple for that, which the binding on this is going to be maple. So it's going to look like the binding just gets returned at the neck and comes down the neck. That's what it's going to look like. And that will buy me actually a couple of inches, I think. Let's see here. So just as an example, so we're at 1 inch. We're at 1.25 inches. So if we add 1/4 on each side of that, then that's about 1.75 inches. You know, so approximately I'm taking 1.75 inches out of that 3-inch thing right here. Then of course on the tail end I'm going to have to do something also, and it's going to have to be wider than standard, but it won't be crazy wide, and I think we can make it look really nice. The tricky part about this is making this side connection strong, and I may have to make a slightly larger neck block. I might have to reinforce it on the inside. I'm not exactly sure what I'll have to do there yet, but it is doable, I think. And that's the only way I can see making these sides work. So in order to do all that, I want to get this heel fairly precise right now, so I know what kind of a border I can make for this heel, which will look like the binding has returned around the edge of the heel. I don't know if that makes sense to you or not, but anyway, I'm just trying to find ways to lengthen the sides. And I think this is one of those ways. Off camera, I have already cut this, as you can see, but I carefully marked off everything. You can probably see a double line. This inside line, it will be the finished neck. This outside line is where I plan to cut the neck temporarily. I've cut the heel off just because I could. I, you know, marked the angle that I thought I needed. On this side, I got it pretty close to the angle. On this side, a little off. I need to take a little bit more off with the finger plane. Anyway, you know, it's difficult to do this because I don't really have any pattern for it. I've never done it before, and technically I've never actually seen it done. I mean, I've seen the result of it, because like a D45 Martin has basically what I'm talking about here, but I, you know, not quite sure the best way to do it. So anyway, I'm just hoofing it. I'll figure it out as I go, is the way I figure. You know, I want this line to be really straight across here, right at about where the 14th fret is. I want that to be really, really straight. And it looks pretty straight. Because that's going to be what will determine the piece of wedge shape binding, if you will, that I'm going to cut that's going to be bigger than this, that's going to take up the sides. I don't know if any of that makes any sense at all the way I'm saying it, because I don't know how to say it, because I don't really know what I'm doing. I got to do some more thinking. I think I want to try to get this, you know, sanded really flat, really smooth, and get it exactly perfect as far as a wedge goes. Then I think I'll make the piece that's going to be bigger than this by about whatever, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch bigger or in that neighborhood. It'd probably only be a quarter by the time I'm done, but it'll be whatever the width of the binding is. And I'm going to use this binding by John Manura again. This is what the binding looks like, and this is multi-pieces, but so it's a pretty binding. So this width here basically is how much wider this little plate is that I'm going to make for the back of here. But again, I'm going to do most of this off camera, and I'll just show you the results because I'm just trying to think it through, and I don't know. I'll be fumbling around here trying to figure out exactly how I'm going to do it. I'll show you what I come up with. I have the neck mounted in my jig that you've seen me use before. Let me just show you what that looks like here. This is that neck jig that I've shown in my shop talks. And anyway, I've just got it mounted in a vise, and the vise is clamped to the desk, and it's just a conglomeration of stuff. And it holds the neck fairly secure. And I can route this dovetail up here. That's what I'm planning to do right now. So I have the dovetail bit sit at about half the depth or the length, or whatever you want to refer to it as. In other words, I have to cut the dovetail down to this shelf, and I've got it set to cut about half of that right now. I'm going to go ahead and knock off both of these edges, and I do it all freehand. I've been successful doing it freehand all these years, but there's always a first time for a problem, and your results may vary. So here I go. After I plug it in, here I go. You saw there I grew a third hand. Caleb was doing a vacuum there for me. I'm not quite sure why that's kind of rocked like that. That's kind of weird, isn't it? Got a little shelfy thing going on over on this side. I didn't get it very smooth. I don't know why. This side looks pretty good. I couldn't see the light as well on that side, so I'll have to get that down a little bit more. Probably block the camera a little bit. But I think I'm ready to go ahead and set it to the next depth and give it the final go. Let's see if we can get her done. That looks pretty close, so let's see what happens here. It's all over but the crying. I have to say that's a little disappointing. I've never had it fray out like that before, and that's a function of the wood and the bit, you know, turning that direction. It knocked little splinters out, and of course they right exactly where I wanted it to be perfect. That's just kind of the Rosa curse there. It's just amazing how I don't think I've ever had that happen before, and I don't think I've ever had one that was more important that this be perfect. So there you go. That's kind of disappointing, but you know, there's nothing I could have done about that. Even if I'd have been using a jig, that wood would have frayed out like that because it wanted to. So there you go. Been doing quite a bit of work on this thing off camera. I've got the dovetail cleaned up and got the angle cleaned up as best I can. I've decided to make a neck block here. This is out of walnut and it's the appropriate thickness, but it's considerably wider up here, narrows down to a little wider than normal down here. The dovetail will be cut out of this, but if you can envision this, this is still too thick at the moment, but it's just approximating. This would be more or less attached to the front of the neck block. Rosewood side would come in here like so and mount at an angle to that. I was actually thinking of putting this in here so that the rosewood side, when the binding comes in, would go around this like this. So this binding would go around the neck. Anyway, this shortens, you know, this extends that way the length of the side that I have. So that makes the side longer. And yet it decorates it up and makes it look intentional or on purpose. And of course it is intentional and it is on purpose because, you know, we're doing it that way, but it's you know, you wouldn't know that we did it that way because the sides were going to be too short, is what I'm saying. But hopefully that will make some sense to you here. If I can't really get this all held in place just right, but maybe you can kind of envision what I'm these pieces are too long to fit in here, but you could imagine that sort of like that. And the side would be in here, of course. You wouldn't see the block. And this would be tapered or angled to fit. This is basically where the neck sits. Anyway, that's the best I can come up with, and I think it's going to work. It's still a tricky road ahead because it's going to be difficult to get the sides to match up to this perfectly and all those kinds of things. And I'm wondering whether or not I should route under this and have the side slide under this a little bit, and that's probably what I'll do, but don't know that yet for sure. Okay, so I've got everybody totally confused so far, I'm sure, about what I'm doing here. But the way I think I'm going to proceed now, after thinking it through the most, is I'm going to go ahead and glue this piece of white on here. That way I can run it through my thickness sander, thickness this to the exact thickness of the sides. And then when I lay my sides in here, you know, I'll do my best to make this match up perfectly. It probably won't match up perfectly, but then I'll come back later and route out a channel and have 90% of the channel in this, 10% of it maybe in the side, just to cover up the seam. And then this will fit down in there tight and it'll look like the side actually butted up to this. And I can route the channel up at the top and also 45 this or angle that to match. So that's the direction I'm going. So the first thing I'm going to do is glue this together and let that set, and we'll move on from there. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this on. So I went ahead and stuck that on there. Got the glue on there. Sliding it around a little bit. I'm just going to pop that off because I didn't actually spread it. I wanted to see how good the glue spread. See, it spread pretty good, but it didn't spread perfectly. So I'll put a little bit more on it. That ought to be enough to make it spread perfectly. And I'll clamp that baby down. I'll show you what that looks like once this gets set up. My friends, it has only been moments for you, but it's been a month for me. At least a month, I think, for this whole last Hurrah guitar. I have got to get off of square one here and get moving. I've got the back taped together here as 3 boards, and then I've got the sides here. And as I last recall, I'm sure you will know because I just told you seconds ago, but for me, I had to think about what was the last thing I remember doing on this. And that is that I know that these sides are going to be too short to fit the mold. But I've got to start working them down toward a pair of sides. Working out the sides on this rosewood on this guitar, the last Hurrah guitar. I know for sure that my side plan here is actually short. It's short by, I don't know, on each side I would say it's short by a minimum of a 1/4 inch. Could be actually 3/8 of an inch short. I don't know how it got to be short, but it is short. So, with that in mind, and I've made this special neck block, which is going to take up, because we know these sides are short also. So that's going to help take up some of the space. You can see here how much space, that's the center line. And anyway, so this has an angle in it, so I'm going to use that angle to my advantage. That way it even makes it just that much longer, just because I can use that angle to my advantage. And then I can take and lay this on here, lay this on the center line. And actually, I think I'm going to lay it about I'll lay it on the center line, I guess. And then go back here, and you can't really see that end there on camera right now, but if I get this on the center line, get this all lined up correctly, I think you can see that it works out about equal, just about equal. That's still going to make this side a hair short, I believe. So it may be that the center seam back there may have to be just a little bit wider than standard, but you know, it's really close. It's going to be really, really close. And we'll just have to make it work out however it works out. I can't stretch these boards, unfortunately. I wish I could. This is what I have to work with. And, you know, we're just going to make it work somehow. So, I think what I'm going to do, I've already got this edge here straight, and this is the top of the side. So I think I'm going to get this all taped down, lined up, and then I'm going to trace this on here and just cut both of these pieces out. I have both pieces taped together at the moment. Before I do that though, well, no, I think I've got it right. These two mating surfaces on the inside will actually be reversed and become the outside of the guitar sides, because the two inside edges are the two book matched pieces, and I'll have those facing outwards, if that makes sense to you, because they're the closest two pieces that are going to be identical. So anyway, I'll get this all situated here and I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. I know you can't actually see what I'm doing here, but what I'm doing is I'm taking the front edge of the workbench and I'm lining up this piece of wood right with the front edge of the bench. And I also have this block lined up with the front edge of the bench. That just keeps the block and the side straight. I have, try to show you over here, this is a tapered block, and I've got the corner here touching the side right here. So that's the longest I can get out of this, is by having, the very corner of this touching right here. So that's the best I can help myself here in terms of this pattern. Now I'm going to take this pattern, which should go from the center line, and I'll lay it on here. And in fact, I think I'm just going to tape it down lightly, just because of how complicated all this is. I'm going to tape it down where I can kind of keep it flat.
really hard to keep it straight. It moves on me so easy. I had to hold it in the air like this because the neck block is in the air. So it's working kind of awkward, to be perfectly honest with you. But I think it's going to work. This is really close here. I know that this is short by a 1/4 inch, and this is actually about a 1/16 of an inch even shorter than that. So we will probably have to do a little bit wider tail area there, decoration, than normal, but not too bad. This is just up high a little bit. This might even be a little high. Just trying to line it up the best I can. And then I'm going to trace it, and I think I'm just going to go ahead and trace it with the black magic marker because nothing's going to show up on this dark brown wood, I don't think. And this back profile, it's not a straight line. It's got some curves to it to help it conform to the back a little better when the back gets bent. So that's why it has to be very accurate. You can't just measure it and draw a straight line. That should work. I've got, like I said, I've got these taped together, so I should be able to just cut that line out now. And I'm not too worried about where I have my tape there. It left a little gap, but I can fake that, no problem. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out, and I'll show you what that looks like here in just a moment. Well, we're over here at the bandsaw, as you can see, and I've got my marks on here for cutting out the sides, and we're about ready to give it a shot. Well, there's the two sides, and you can probably see how they're book matched there, how they match. They really do match well. And so that will actually become the outside of the guitar then, and they will go like this. This will be the treble side, and this will be the bass side, if you will. Okay, so I got to do some more sanding on these to get them down to the right specs, and we'll do that now. I'm at my homemade thickness sander here, and I'm going to try to run these sides through. The one thing that I thought about after I made my last little clip is that there is a kind of a little bit of a defect right here. That's a low spot. I'm not sure that's going to come out, and that would be on the outside. I may have to put this on the inside because of that, because it's just a little bit of a saw mark, and I'm not 100% sure I can sand that out. The other side has got quite a few saw marks, but they're not that deep. I'm just not sure how I'm going to end up making this work, to be honest with you, because we're getting down close to the thickness now. You know, I can go down to 70 thousandths or so, but I don't want to go much thinner than that. 65 thousandths maybe would probably be fine, but I sure don't want to go any thinner than that. So let's see where it ends up. I'm not exactly sure how this is going to turn out yet, because it's just too difficult to predict. By the skin of my teeth, I made it, and even that, I'll have to do a little tiny bit of hand, feathering right there just to clean up that. These came out to 65 thousandths, which is a 5 thousandths thinner than I typically go. That's the thickness of a human hair, so I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but that is actually quite a bit when you spread that out over the whole side. On the one positive side, that just makes it lighter, makes it ring better. It's going to be a really resonant body, no question about that. On the negative side, of course, it loses a tiny bit of strength, But in this case, with this being slab sawed wood, it's not as likely to split on the sides. If it was quarter sawn and it was that thin, if you pop it, it could easily crack. Now there are a little bit of quarter sawn in places here, but they're right up against the edges. So, you know, it's kind of is what it is, like I say. You know, this is what I had to work with, and had to use it this way, and it's going to be a beautiful guitar. It's going to sound great, I just know, but I will have to do a little extra reinforcing on the insides, and I do that anyway, so it's not a big deal. Been doing a lot of little miscellaneous behind the scenes. This has to go like so, and this would be the outside of the treble side of the guitar. And you know, I know it, you know, the angle needs to be cut, and if you can see there right now, if I'm just approximating, but the angle needs to be cut there to fit, and you can see it doesn't fit right now. I believe you can see that on camera. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to turn it over with the flat, all the flat is down. I bump it up there to where it's touching at the closest point. I don't know if that makes sense to you, but I'll try to show you what I'm doing one time and then I'll just do it. But I'm bumping it in there like so. It leaves a gap at the top. I'll set my calipers to that gap and draw right straight down the white line, and the pencil mark then will be the line that I need to cut, and it'll make it match this white perfectly. At least that's the theory, and I'm pretty sure the theory's right. So anyway, I'm going to turn it around here and do that so I can see what I'm doing. And as long as I keep everything flat, we should be good. And I just need to set the calipers to the right spacing there, because I don't want to cut off even a hair more than I need to, because I need every bit I can get. And that makes a perfect mark, as you can see, a perfect pencil mark. And if I cut that mark perfectly, then it should butt right up to that, just as tight as it can go. And then just as a sanity check, this will be in the guitar this way. This is the top. This is the top up here. And in fact, the other thing I can tell is that this is still a little long, and I'm going to cut it off of the bottom because that gives me the more width at the top, which helps also lengthen the side just a hair. Not very much, but every tiny little bit counts when you're trying to increase the length. So I'm going to go cut that off. Okay, the bandsaw is still running, you can hear it. But anyway, I just cut that off, and let's just see. I'm going to be brave and turn it around here and let you see it first before I even really get to see if it's going to be right. And this should match up perfectly if I did it right. And I'm going to be honest and tell you it matches up within, oh, I don't know, less than a 64th of an inch. I mean, less than that. It's pretty tiny right there. I would even say maybe only maybe only about 10,000, 15 thousandths actually. So it's really close. About as close as it needs to be. And by the way, this joint will probably be covered with a binding or something like that, or we'll probably do something in that joint later. I'm not going to worry about that right now. I'm just trying to get the sides bent and matched up as well as I can get them matched up. So I think while I'm in that mode right there, I'm going to go get the other side and match it up to this one here. And I'll lay this one down, and I'll be back in a second. I've got it turned around here again where I can see what I'm doing, and I'm just tracing the other side now. And that went pretty well. I slipped just a little bit on this inside here, and I'm just going to knock that off so I don't accidentally start following that. So now I'll hack off that little tiny bit there that maybe you can see shining. And we'll be ready to go. I've got the side bender all heated up. In fact, it's been heated up for about an hour because I've been finding other things I had to keep doing here before I could get ready to bend these sides. I have conveniently swung my table around this time, and I have the mold sitting here on my saw table and my bender sitting on my router table, and that will save me a lot of steps, as Charles has pointed out many times. So Charles, thank you for making me aware here that I need to be more efficient, and I am definitely more efficient on this one. The question is, will that be beneficial to the operation? Because now I'm actually hitting this. So I may have to swing back and actually take a step. Anyway, it's better. It's just that it is a better way to work, that's for sure. I'm going to wet this down, and I guess you can't really see me doing that. I'm spraying it off on the floor here so that it doesn't get on this metal table. And I'm just spraying it with a water bottle, spraying the side to get it wet on both sides. Some people say, why don't you soak it? Well, I used to do it that way. I used to soak it, but I'm finding that just using this, with this bar here, just dampening it down, it steams really, really well. So I don't really feel like I need to do that anymore. And this is my very first time bending rosewood, I believe. I don't think I've ever tried to bend it before. So I'm just hoping that it goes well. From the smell of it, I think I have bent it before. It smells exactly like a smell I've smelled before. So maybe I have bent it and I just forgot. It has a very unique smell when you're bending it here. I do so many things I can't keep track. I just need somebody to follow along behind me and write them all down. It's starting to bend already. It's looks like it's going to bend fairly easy. The trick is I've got to bend this really close to get it to fit in here. So I'm about in the right spot. I probably need to move down just a tiny bit, and we'll do that right now. I really haven't bent a lot of rosewood, I can tell you that. Since most all my guitars have been made out of padauk, I made a couple out of mahogany, and I'm trying to think of what else I made them out of. But I think they've been mostly padauk and mahogany, actually. This is going to be a pretty guitar when it's done, I think. Trying not to get in any real big hurry about it. I'm just kind of letting the heat and the metal do its thing here. You can see it's bending pretty well, and it fits the side fairly well already. Looks like it's bending in the right places is what I'm saying. I can see I need to probably bend it a little bit more. Yeah, maybe not. It's pretty close. It's about right. These things are all just by eye. You can't really, have a pattern for trying to bend something like this. Well, I made a little bit of progress off camera, but not very much. And I still got a lot of bending to do on this, and for some reason this is not bending as easy as the first part did. These long bends sometimes are a little harder to bend because you're just spreading the heat out in so many different directions for so many different areas. It's getting close, but it's really quite a ways to go yet. I think I'll just turn the camera off and show you what it looks like when I get her closer. You can see the process, so it's pretty obvious what I'm doing. Well, we got her all bent and it fits the mold just about as perfect as a side could fit the mold. I'm right here on the center line. I would say I'm about 3/8 of an inch narrow. Maybe a little bit more than that even, maybe a 1/2 inch. Now, I don't think I'm quite a 1/2 inch. But anyway, the point is that it's going to take, a fairly wide strip to go up the back here. But that's okay. We'll just make it a decorative feature, And so anyway, that one there is pretty much finished. I'm going to just get a few clamps and hold it in place, and then I'll start bending the other side. Made really good progress on this. Got it bent. It's just about as perfectly bent to the mold as you could get one to bend. It took plenty of time, but it wasn't anything real hard to do. At least not compared to a lot of them I've been over the years. And the only thing I had problems with on this one is seriously his hand problem. Man, I'm telling you, my right hand is killing me. So I'm not even going to go any further tonight. It's 4 o'clock or so, and I'm just going to knock off for the evening. But I tell you, I'm real impressed with how well it bent and how nice it fits to the mold. I think the fact that it's not quarter sawn made that a little bit easier, to be perfectly honest with you. But either way, it's going to be fine, and it's going to look really good when we're done.